Hello, everyone. Tonight we are stepping into a place where the sky rumbles and the ground stutters, not from storms or giants, but from something far stranger. You are surrounded by jungle that hums with wet heat, and above the thick canopy clouds promise nothing. And yet, thunder. Not from the heavens, from something down here with you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, because you're about to lose all sense of both. Now turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You squat low beneath a patch of ginkgo leaves, one hand in the soft mulch, the other trembling slightly, not with fear, but confusion. Because the thunder you just heard didn't come from above. It came from behind that fern wall, not 30 paces away. But nothing's crashing through the forest, no trees are falling, no beast is stomping toward you in a tantrum of hunger. Just the boom, like the air itself hiccuped. Another one. Louder this time, it rumbles your ribs but leaves no aftershock, no shaking ground. You've lived long enough in this wet, green world to know that real thunder needs weather. And right now there's none. The sky is pale, hung with mist and pale blue nothing. No lightning, no wind. The boom again. You should run. Any sane creature would. But instead you creep forward, dragging your weight along the soft roots like a heron sneaking up on a fish. There's something about this sound that isn't just strange, it's wrong. Wrong in the way a whisper in a cave becomes a shout. Wrong in the way your mind reads it as huge, but your ears can't locate a source. A few more steps and you find a clearing no wider than a dried pond. Ferns ring the circle like theater seats, and in the center is nothing. Until it moves. A blur. Low to the ground, fast but deliberate. It darts from one log to another and then thumps the ground hard. Boom! Now you see it. Feathered, small, maybe your own height if it stood up straight, but it doesn't. It moves with knees bent, body coiled like a question mark. Tail stiff, not for balance, for direction. Its feet, each one wide with 3 splayed toes, press into the mud and then slam down like a wrestler taunting a crowd. The sound isn't natural. It's too big for its size, like a toddler whispering through a megaphone. You lean back, eyebrows raised. Oh, you whisper you're a liar, because that's exactly what it is, a noise liar. A drama queen with feathers and a false thunder in its pocket. This little dinosaur, whatever it is, has figured out a trick. It's not the first to use its feet to make noise. Humans will do it centuries later with drums. But this one has found something special. Something hollow beneath the soil, maybe a layer of sun-dried roots, maybe the rotted-out belly of a buried tree, maybe nothing but soft clay that echoes just right. Whatever it is, the sound is real, and it's using it like a song. Boom, step, boom, boom, tail flick, boom, pause. It's choreographed, like it practiced, like it's trying to tell the forest, don't mess with me. I am the storm. You watch it circle once, then twice, stomping in patterns. There's rhythm, not random panic. This is no warning dance. This is theater. And the forest listens. Birds hush. Even the insects pause, unsure if the vibration means predator or weather. One curious mammal with a flat snout pokes out of the bushes and immediately regrets it, bolting at the next boom, as if Poseidon had just slapped the earth. You chuckle under your breath. You're not dangerous, are you? But then you frown. Because maybe it is. Not with teeth, not with claws, but with illusion. And sometimes that's worse. Historians still debate whether these kinds of mimic behaviors began as accident or intention. Some say natural selection just rewarded the noisy. Others argue it was performance evolution's first theater kids stomping around for attention and fear. Either way, it worked. And here you are crouched behind a half-dead cicade, watching the understudy of a storm rehearse for its invisible audience. There's something uncanny about how still the air is after each sound, like the jungle inhales and forgets to exhale. You feel it too, a twitch in your gut. Not quite fear, just the sense that you've heard something you shouldn't have. And then it vanishes. No dramatic exit, no flourish. It just scuttles into the shadows soundless now, leaving only that low hum in your bones where the echoes used to live. You sit there blinking, half laughing, half spooked. What kind of creature uses thunder to make itself seem bigger? What kind of world lets a chicken-sized dinosaur cosplay as a storm? The answer: this one. Because 100 million years before humans invent the drum, the stage, or the humble acoustic guitar, this little beast already beat them to the punchline. With 2 feet, a good sense of rhythm, and probably more feathers than dignity. As you rise and brush the dirt from your knees, you wonder what else is lying to you in this forest. What other tricks has evolution buried beneath its ferns? You won't sleep easy tonight. But hey, at least the thunder's not coming from the sky. Not yet. You return to the same patch of jungle the next morning, though your muscles would rather be anywhere else. Something about that fake thunder still rings in your chest. You tell yourself it's curiosity, you tell yourself it's science, but deep down it's simpler. You want to hear it again, that hollow boom, that performance, that illusion of power. The sun has barely cleared the canopy. Ferns drip with dew. A small lizard flicks its tongue in your direction and then disappears into the underbrush with the elegance of a soap bubble popping. The air smells like wet bark and decaying leaves, and somewhere in the distance something screeches. Not in fear, just to remind everyone it's awake. You wait and wait. But the forest isn't in the mood for thunder this morning. Instead, it answers with its usual symphony: buzzing wings, crackling twigs, a distant splash, and something else barely perceptible. An echo. Faint, quick. A reply to a sound that hasn't happened yet. It comes from the east slope where the trees lean downhill and the soil dips into a shallow ravine. You creep toward it, every step a silent argument with twigs and roots. When you reach the edge, you stop. There are no mimics today, but the forest is talking. You hear it in how branches sway not with the breeze, but with breath. Creatures listening, adjusting. You hear it in the rustle of leaves long after the bird that landed there has flown away. You hear it in the ferns, they shift without being touched, reacting to vibrations in the soil. There's a language here, but you weren't born to speak it. You were born to guess. Below a pair of prehistoric mammals, something like a cross between a weasel and a possum, skitter across the clearing. They stop, they sniff, and then they bolt, but not because of you. Not because of any predator you can see. No, they run because something beneath their feet spoke. A low, dull thump, like someone knocking on the underside of the world. But again, no mimic. The trees do not shake. The ferns do not recoil. The sound feels more like a memory than an event. As if the earth is remembering yesterday's lie and playing it back. Your skin prickles. You follow the sound and find yourself at a wedge between 3 old tree trunks, each one hollowed by time and termites. Inside this natural chamber, echoes bounce like trapped insects. It's a listening post, a place to hear what the rest of the forest is too loud to notice. And that's when you hear it again. Not a boom this time, a footstep. But not a footstep 3 spaced perfectly apart, deliberate, each one slightly heavier than the last. A rhythm, not a walk, a message. You flatten against the mossy bark, holding your breath. Something is performing again. But then you notice something different. This time there's an answer, not a challenge, not a copy, a response. Further down the ravine, something else stomps just slightly out of sync. An echo of the echo. Higher pitched, less confident. A younger mimic, or a rival, or something completely new. The first mimic, if that's what it is, responds with a triple thump. Sharp, clear, and the forest responds with silence. You don't know if it's fear, awe, or confusion, but every animal around you simply stops. Even your own thoughts feel muffled, like you're underwater. Now you get it. This isn't just communication, it's hierarchy. The mimic isn't just tricking predators into thinking it's bigger. It's tricking the entire forest into giving it authority. like a toddler slamming a gavel and expecting the courtroom to quiet down, and it works. You hear the younger mimic again, but this time its rhythm falters. A misstep. The echo lands in the wrong place, awkward, childish. The forest doesn't fall silent this time. The spell is broken. The elder mimic responds with a single clean boom and then silence. The echo doesn't bounce back, because the forest has made up its mind. One of these things speaks thunder. The other just makes noise. You blink and realize your mouth's been open for half a minute. Historians still debate whether early animals formed rudimentary sound territories like this long before vocal dominance evolved into song or speech. Some believe these zones were as fiercely guarded as watering holes or nesting grounds. Others think it was just noise wars between bored dinosaurs and equally bored bushes. But when you feel it like this, when silence rolls out like a red carpet, you don't need consensus. You need context. So you crouch lower. Not just to watch, to listen. And that's when the forest speaks back. Not in booms, not in growls, but in patterns. Bird calls mimic. The mimic. A tree frog chirps in the exact rhythm of that first thunder. Insects rattle in sync. It's not obedience, it's interpretation. The forest is not just silencing itself, it's repeating, copying, as if learning the new language of fake storms. And for a moment, it works. The mimic doesn't stomp again. It just listens. You smile. You're not the only one playing games, huh? Because mimicry can be contagious. One odd fact. A modern lyrebird can imitate camera shutters, chainsaws, and human voices. That's not prehistoric behavior, but it's a prehistoric mindset. Copy, the thing that scares, confuses, or dazzles. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to sound like it does. You lean back against the trunk and wonder how many lies the forest is telling right now. How many creatures are pretending to be someone or something else? And how many of them started with nothing but a well-timed stomp and a hollow log? Eventually, the forest returns to normal. The mimic slinks off, the birds lose interest, the bugs resume their squabbles. But something lingers. A question, maybe. A feeling. A suspicion that under the ferns, the real language isn't made of growls or chirps, but of echoes. And the only rule: make them believe your thunder. You wake the next morning to something strange. Your feet ache. Not the kind of ache from walking too far or standing too long, but a deep, earthy soreness like the ground itself resented your weight. You stretch, roll your ankles, and immediately regret stepping on that moss-covered root yesterday. Still, soreness or not, you head back. Because now you have a mission: find those footsteps. You move carefully this time, scanning the ground more than the trees. The forest here has a way of playing tricks, but you've learned its rhythm. Not everything is as it seems, especially not what sounds big. You think back to the first time you mistook the mimic's thump for a real storm, and now looking down at the soft, leafy soil. You wonder what if that was the point. Because here on the trail's edge are prints, large ones, deep enough that the surrounding mud puckers. You crouch down, press your hand inside. It swallows your wrist easily. You glance around. You mutter, sure. A giant passed through here. Just casually. Except it didn't. Because 2 paces later, the prints shrink. Same shape, 3 toes. Splayed, but smaller. Lighter, and spaced in a completely different rhythm. You frown. You follow the path, and soon it becomes clear the deeper prints were staged. The mimic had stomped in place again and again, widening each one like a sculptor shaping a lie. Then it had walked off lighter, softer, resuming its true stride. You can even see where it dragged a branch to fake tail marks, then abandoned the effort entirely. You whistle low, you little fraud. But you're not mad. You're impressed. It's one thing to sound like a giant, it's another to leave evidence. This is beyond mimicry. This is physical illusion, thunder in sound, in shape, in shadow. This dinosaur, this thunder child, wasn't content to fool the ear. It wanted to fool the eye. Trick the trackers. Fake a history that never happened. And here's the twist: it worked. For years, perhaps centuries, animals would avoid this trail assuming it belonged to something they could never challenge. A predator with feet as wide as cooking pots with the power to break trees and silence rivals. But it was just feathers, noise, and drama. You sit on a fallen trunk trying to decide if you've stumbled on evolutionary brilliance or prehistoric stand-up comedy. Historians still debate whether physical mimicry like footprints, scat patterns, or nesting deception was as widespread as vocal mimicry. There's evidence some small theropods dug fake nests to distract egg thieves. Others may have created false wallows to mislead rivals. But this faking footsteps as a form of territorial control, that's performance art. That's genius. You look around at the trail again. It curves to the left, then stops suddenly at a ridge where the land falls away. And just there beside a rock that probably hasn't moved in decades is a flattened area. Circular, clean, like a stage. You climb to it, step inside the ring. It's hollow, not empty hollow. When you press your heel down the ground, sings back. A faint boom, muffled but unmistakable. You lift your foot, try again. Boom. You smile. This is where it practices. Thunder doesn't come easy. It has to be rehearsed. This dinosaur isn't just performing, it's training. You imagine it here at dusk, testing the angles, measuring each step, adjusting posture. Like a dancer perfecting form. Like a drummer in sound check. And then you spot it. Perched at the edge of the circle is the mimic, half hidden beneath a mess of feathers and moss. One eye watching you with that curious sideways stare that birds still use today. You raise your hand slowly. Don't mind me. Just a fan. It doesn't move. But you see it thinking, measuring. Then it steps forward and stomps. Boom! Even knowing it's fake, your heart skips. You stand your ground. Nod. Yeah, solid form, good reverb. It blinks, then steps again. Boom, boom. This time it holds the pose. As if waiting for your review. You clap. You nailed the second one. The first felt a little overacted. No reaction. You try a different approach, mimicking its rhythm with your hands slapping your thighs. Boom, boom, boom. It tilts its head. Then it copies your pattern exactly. Boom, boom, boom. You blink. No way. You change it. Boom, boom, boom. Pause. Boom. It follows perfectly. Your brain scrambles to catch up. This isn't just mimicry. This is interactive. A call and response. The kind of communication that implies pattern recognition, memory, anticipation. Suddenly, you're not sure which one of you is the scientist. It steps back, circles the stage, then stops. And with a flourish of its tail, it slams both feet down in a double thump that echoes clean across the ridge. Boom! The forest answers. Birds take off. Insects still. A rustle in the bushes tells you some distant animal is running away from a sound it never saw coming. The mimic gives you one last look. Then it vanishes into the trees. Odd fact. Some frogs in the modern Amazon fake the sounds of larger frogs to steal mating opportunities. It's like crashing a party with someone else's voice. Turns out the idea isn't new, not even close. As you walk back to camp, you feel the echo still vibrating in your chest. Not because it was loud, because it was intended. The mimic didn't just want to be heard, it wanted to be believed. And for a few minutes, there it was. You can't help but wonder how many giants in the fossil record were just small performers with good timing and a gift for drama. You glance back toward the ridge, half hoping for one last stomp. Nothing. Just the forest whispering to itself, like an audience unsure if the play has ended or if the actor is simply waiting in the wings. The sun is low now, sagging just above the canopy like a heavy lid. Everything's dipped in orange fog. Not smoke, not mist. Just the kind of air that's tired, thick, warm, and filled with dust motes you can almost hear brushing past your skin. It's dusk and you shouldn't be out here. But of course you are. Because you want to see it again. Not just the echo, not just the print, the thing itself. You move through the ferns like a rumor soft and quiet, barely rustling the leaves. Every few steps you pause, crouch, let the forest settle around you. You're not hunting. You're waiting for a story to unfold. Then you hear it. Not the thunder this time. Just a soft swish, a rustle, a whisper of movement. You freeze. There, near the stream bed under the low branches of a fallen conifer, is the mimic. It doesn't see you yet. Its head is tilted down, pecking at the damp soil, maybe looking for insects, maybe just feeling the ground. But its legs are coiled, spring-loaded. You've seen that stance before in dancers and birds and people, about to do something stupidly dramatic. And then it does. It thumps, once, hard. The sound bounces off the stone wall of the ravine and comes back doubled. The air stirs. Your ears tighten. It's like a door slammed in the sky. The mimic straightens, puffing out a collar of neck feathers, each one tipped in charcoal black. Its eyes flash golden in the last light, and it steps sideways, tail lifted slightly. This isn't random behavior. This is performance. You can't help it. You whisper, "Showtime." The little dinosaur begins a routine. A real one. Not the casual stomps you've seen before. No. This is precise. A practice sequence of steps around the edge of the stream. It stomps once near a hollow log, boom. Then pivots and thumps twice beside a root cluster, boom boom. Then glides silently to the center of the clearing, pauses, spreads its arms wide like feathered fans, and slams both feet down with all its weight. Boom! The echo fills the bowl-shaped glade. Even the stream hesitates. You swear the water forgets to ripple. It circles again, repeats the pattern. Once near the log, twice near the roots. Pause. Slam. You want to call it ridiculous, but you can't, because it's working. You feel it in your spine. A little creature using thunder like a brush painting fear into the air. One odd fact. Some tropical birds today use the acoustics of tree cavities to amplify their mating calls. They find hollow chambers and yell into them to sound bigger, louder, more irresistible. It's not deception exactly, it's marketing. The mimic, though, it's not looking for a date. It's looking for reverence. You notice something strange. Each time the mimic steps into a hollow point, it angles its head slightly to one side, almost as if listening, adjusting, as if mapping out the soundscape like a sound engineer. It doesn't just want to make thunder, it wants to place it precisely. You sit down slowly, tucking yourself into the brush, not hiding, not anymore, just witnessing. The mimic begins a new sequence. This time, it hops. Not far, just enough to land both feet with a sharp clap. A percussive jump. It repeats the move. Again and again. Boom, 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 boom. Silence. Boom. You blink. Wait a second, you murmur. You're looping the rhythm. It's not just making noise, it's memorizing its own patterns. Replaying them like a melody. It's building a language of footsteps, a storm in Morse code. And you understand now this is not a warning, this is not defense. This is identity. This is the mimic telling the world, I am this sound. I am thunder shaped like a bird. Historians still debate whether such ritualized behaviors in non-avian dinosaurs were territorial displays, mating rituals, or just sheer chaos. But watching it now, the debate feels small. You're witnessing something older than intention, deeper than instinct, a creature defining itself through repetition. Performance as survival. And then something unexpected happens. From across the stream bed, a branch cracks. A small predator, something lean and snouted. Maybe a dromaeosauridae juvenile slips through the shadows. It freezes at the sight of the mimic, unsure. The mimic doesn't flinch. It simply stomps. Once. Boom. The little predator backs up. Another step forward, slower this time. Calculated. The mimic lowers its head. Boom, boom. The predator hesitates. You can almost hear it thinking, calculating, deciding if this strange thunderbird is worth the trouble. It lunges forward half-heartedly, a test more than an attack. The mimic raises both feathered arms, puffs its body outward like an angry pillow, and lets out a screech, high-piercing and weirdly melodic. A sound that doesn't match its size. Then it stomps. Boom! The predator scrambles away, tail-tucked claws skidding in the mud. The mimic watches it vanish, then lowers its arms, flicks its tail once, and resumes its dance like nothing happened. No chase, no gloat, no hunger. You shake your head, half laughing. You're not a predator, you whisper. You're a performance artist with boundary issues. Still chuckling, you glance up. The light has nearly gone. And in that orange dusk with the boom still echoing in your bones, you wonder if maybe the forest needs creatures like this. Not the biggest, not the fastest, but the weirdos, the dramatists, the small things that sound too big. Because somewhere, long after the trees rot and the fossils harden, someone will find the footprint of a giant. And beside it, a creature the size of a turkey. And they'll say, no way this came from that. And they'll be wrong. You don't return the next day. Or the day after, you try to resist to focus on other things, tracking the trail of a nodosaur herd, sketching leaf imprints for the village elders, even counting mushrooms like that makes a difference to anyone. But your ears keep reaching for it. That boom. That hollow note that makes your ribs hum and your eyes dart toward the trees. So finally, 3 days later, you go back. You follow the same route, but slower this time. Not with the wide-eyed curiosity of discovery, but with the quiet patience of someone returning to a secret. And there near the same stream bed, you find the mimic again. It's waiting, not hiding, not hunting, just standing almost perfectly still in the center of the same clearing. But there's something different now. The way it moves, the way it stands, you don't know how to explain it, but it feels rehearsed. You crouch beside a cluster of tree ferns watching. The mimic begins to circle the clearing. Slowly, like it's drawing an invisible shape. It stops at certain points, 3 of them evenly spaced, like the corners of a triangle. At each one, it tests the ground. A stomp, a pause, a tilt of the head, a stomp again. It's not just picking spots, it's tuning them. And then it begins. Boom left corner, boom boom right, boom, silence, boom center. You squint. No way. It's creating an acoustic loop. A beat, not a random rhythm. A timed sequence that causes the echoes to overlap. Left side rebounds off the fallen log. Right side bounces off the rock wall. Center echoes straight up caught in the canopy. When it hits all 3 in order, the entire clearing vibrates. You feel the air bounce. Not rumble, bounce. Like standing inside a drum. It's figured out how to use geometry. Not that it knows what a triangle is. Not that it cares. But its feet know. Its instincts know. Some combination of trial and error, ancestral memory, and possibly just plain show-off energy has turned this little feathered dinosaur into an architect of sound. It's not mimicking thunder anymore. It's orchestrating it. You watch mesmerized as the mimic turns the forest into its own private amphitheater. And that's when you see the final touch, the props. At each point in its triangle, it's moved something. A fallen branch here, a cluster of hollow pine cones there, a pile of dry leaves arranged just so. When the mimic stomps, the sound vibrates through these props, adding texture, rattles, scrapes, whispers. It's not just louder, it's more complicated. Like thunder with reverb, you shake your head. You're a liar and a composer. Lovely. It thumps again, then flares its tail feathers, which now you notice have tiny bony knobs on the tips. Not for balance, not for combat, for sound. When it flicks its tail hard enough, the knobs slap together like a maraca. Thump, rattle, thump, thump, flick, shrack. It's stunning. Not just as behavior, but as a concept. A dinosaur using environmental acoustics, body positioning, and feather manipulation to construct a full-on audio illusion. Historians still debate whether non-vocal acoustic manipulation like this using environment rather than vocal cords was common in feathered dinosaurs. Some point to fossilized tail structures as evidence for sound-based signaling. Others argue it's all accidental, just Weird anatomy with weird consequences. But you've seen it now. It's deliberate. It's performance. And performance implies intent. The mimic stops suddenly, turns its head toward the trees. A flock of arboreal mammals, squirrel-like long-limbed watches from the branches. They're frozen, silent. Their ears twitch with each stomp, each rattle. They don't flee. They don't advance. They simply listen. You get it now. The mimic isn't just bluffing, it's manipulating behavior. Prey animals freeze. Predators hesitate. Rivals pause. Not because they see a threat, but because they hear one. And sound in a world before words is gospel. You watch as a small juvenile ceratopsian creeps up to the edge of the clearing, eyeing the mimic with suspicion. It's no threat too small, too nervous, but it steps forward anyway. The mimic catches sight of it, stomps once, waits, stomps twice, waits again. The juvenile stares. Then, for some reason that only makes sense to it, it runs. You laugh quietly. No teeth, no chase, no violence, just intimidation by percussion. One odd fact: male peacocks have been recorded shaking their tail feathers at a frequency that causes a low-pitched rustle audible only to females at close range. It's a sound designed for one audience, one purpose. The mimic, though, its audience is everyone. And its purpose: theater. It's not pretending to be thunder because it wants food or safety. It's doing it because it can. Because it's learned that power doesn't have to be real. It just has to be perceived. And suddenly the idea hits you like a slap. What if this little dinosaur didn't evolve to mimic something else? What if thunder, the real kind, was mimicking it? Maybe storms aren't terrifying because they're loud. Maybe they're terrifying because some creature long ago learned how to sound like one. You sit back stunned by your own thought. The mimic finishes its routine, folds its feathers, circles the clearing once more, then vanishes into the brush without fanfare. You don't follow. You just sit there alone in the echo chamber it left behind, feeling like you just watched the first ever rock concert put on by something with a brain the size of a walnut. And yet somehow it understood something fundamental. If you want to rule the forest, you don't need teeth. You just need good acoustics. It's well past midnight when you sit by the campfire scratching absent-minded circles into the dirt with a stick, still hearing echoes that aren't there. You're not the only one. Others have noticed it too, not the mimic, but the silence it leaves behind. The hush after each boom. The tremor in the roots that lingers longer than expected. No one talks about it directly, but eyes are wider than usual, and people step just a little lighter near the stream. You decide to ask one of the elders, Moroa, the one who never sleeps, who claims to remember the scent of the first tree. She stares at you for a long moment, then says, "Some things don't grow to match the world. The world grows to match them." That doesn't clear much up, but it feels right. You thank her, wander off, and before you know it, you're back at that clearing again alone. You take a seat on a dry log near the edge, expecting silence. But tonight's different. The air's too still. The bugs too quiet. There's a kind of tension, like the moment before a sneeze or a story. And then it starts. 3 stomps. Precise, familiar. You look up expecting the mimic. But this time it's not alone. Another one steps into view, slightly smaller. Feathers a bit more ragged. Its tail lacks the signature knobs. Its steps aren't quite right. You feel a jolt in your chest, not fear, not excitement. Something stranger: anticipation. The second one thumps. Clumsy. It hits a dry patch, and instead of thunder, you get a dull thwump. The sound doesn't echo, it just dies. You wince. Oof, rough debut. The first mimic stops, lowers its head. Then slowly, deliberately, it stomps again. Once, perfect. The second tries to match. Still awkward, but closer. It's a dance. A ritual. Not aggressive, not affectionate. Instructional. This is how mimicry becomes tradition. Historians still debate whether non-mammalian species shared learned behavior across generations or just acted on instinct. But watching these two now, the truth seems obvious: the little one is learning. You watch them go back and forth, stomp for stomp. Sometimes in sync, sometimes in defiance. Each echo tests the forest's attention, and the forest listens. But something else is happening here. The first mimic begins shifting its routine, less thunder, more rhythm. The echoes aren't as loud but flow like music. Patterns emerge. Booms followed by quick steps, tail flicks, and feather flares. Every motion seems to have weight meaning. And the second mimic, it's copying more than just sound now. It's copying timing, form, pacing. The mimic doesn't just control sound, it controls story. You get the sense that somewhere deep in the shared memory of these creatures, something ancient exists. A time when smaller beings outlived larger ones. When fake roars saved real lives. When being mistaken for thunder meant surviving the night. One odd fact. Some fossilized footprints have no matching fossils nearby, just deep impressions from something that walked heavily, yet left no bones. For decades, paleontologists thought it meant extinction. Now, some wonder if it meant deception. Maybe the bones were always too small. Maybe they belonged to creatures like this. The mimics pause. You think it's over. But then both together slam their feet in unison. Boom! Louder than ever, it feels choreographed, like thunder rehearsed. And then the forest changes. A flock of night creatures rises like confetti from the trees. A small predator, maybe the same one from before, yelps and sprints into the dark. Even the frogs go quiet. The mimics hold the pose. Absolute silence follows. A silence that makes you want to apologize just for existing. Then the first mimic slowly steps away, fading into the underbrush. The second watches, doesn't follow. It stays, alone in the clearing, breath shallow, chest fluttering. Then timidly it stomps. The sound is softer than before, but it echoes. And that's all it needs. You smile. The lesson stuck. You sit in the aftershocks thinking about stories passed not through words or pictures, but through noise, through patterns, through shared performance. These dinosaurs weren't just bluffing their way through the ecosystem, they were rewriting it. One stomp at a time. The clearing is quiet now. You could leave. But instead, you lie back against the moss and stare up at the sky, still half lit by stars and half choked by mist. Somewhere out there, real thunder rolls. Distant, faint, and yet it feels smaller than the echo you just heard. Because down here under branches older than names, something feathered has found a way to fake the gods. And sometimes, just sometimes, the sky copies back. The real storm arrives 3 nights later. It doesn't creep in gently. It doesn't announce itself with a polite wind. No. It just arrives violent, wet, loud, like the sky tripped over its own anger and landed face first into your valley. You're awake before the first crack of lightning, already sitting up in your shelter because you feel it. The pressure drop, the strange weight behind your eyes, the breathlessness in the air. It's as if the forest itself is holding its lungs in anticipation. Then comes the first boom. Real thunder, skyborn, infinite. It's not like the mimic's echo. This one has no rhythm, no form. It just tears. You sit beneath your lean-to of sticks and woven leaves, clutching a warm stone for comfort, like it's a pet, and you're wondering, will the mimic still perform tonight? Will it dare? The next boom answers that. Not the sky, the forest. A ground thump. You blink unsure. Maybe your ears are just scrambled. But then it happens again. Louder this time. Intentional. You slip out of your shelter into the downpour, soaked within seconds. Water hits you sideways. Trees sway like nervous dancers. You wade toward the clearing branches, whipping your face, your breath visible even in the warm rain. And there it is. The mimic. Soaked, dripping, but alive. It stands in the same triangle you've seen before, body trembling not with fear but with energy. As if lightning hasn't hit yet because it's waiting for this thing to finish first. The mimic stomps. Boom. Then the sky answers. Thunder cracks in reply. No rhythm, just chaos. But the mimic doesn't flinch. It stomps again. Louder. Heavier. Tail raised like an antenna to the clouds. Water flies in arcs from its feathers with each movement. Boom! Crack. The sky mimics back. You swear the mimic is timing its steps to the lightning now. Waiting for the flash. stepping with the thunder. Stomp, boom, flash, sky, boom. It's become a duet. You duck beneath a moss-covered log for shelter, watching in disbelief as the dinosaur holds its ground against the fury of the world. It doesn't run, doesn't cower. It performs. Each stomp placed carefully between the sky's tantrums, weaving itself into the storm's rhythm. One odd fact: elephants have been observed to sense distant thunderstorms through vibrations in the ground miles away. They don't just hear storms, they feel them. You wonder if the mimic can too, if it knows when thunder is coming by sensing the low tremble beneath its feet. And here, right now, it's stepping into those trembles, matching them, owning them. A flash of lightning turns the clearing white. For one brief second, you see the mimic in perfect silhouette, arms, splayed feathers, arched mouth slightly open in a silent call. A godless statue of defiance. Then darkness again. And thunder. The sky cracks like a bone. Still, the mimic stomps. This isn't mimicry anymore. This is ritual. Historians still debate whether prehistoric animals observed and reacted to weather patterns in complex ways. But what you're seeing here defies any dry academic paper. This is not reaction. This is participation. The storm continues, but the wind begins to shift. The trees no longer scream, they sway. Like they're listening, like the storm is shifting focus from chaos to rhythm. You watch as the mimic stomps twice, then pauses, holding the final echo. The thunder doesn't return immediately, just a low rumble. Less angry, almost cooperative. Another stomp. This time the echo hits a moment before the lightning, like the forest is warning the sky what comes next. And now, the other creatures begin to respond. Frogs croak in strange, syncopated pulses. Crickets click to the beat. Somewhere nearby, a tree shudders and drops its fruit not out of fear but timing. Everything is with the mimic now. For a moment, the storm and the performance become indistinguishable. You can't tell which boom is from sky, which from foot. Then it happens. A massive fork of lightning tears down the hill behind the clearing, striking a dead tree and splitting it with a blinding crack. The light is pure white. The air screams. You flinch, covering your face. When you look again, the mimic is standing completely still. Steam rises from its wet feathers. Its triangle of sound props is in disarray, logs knocked over, hollow cones scattered. Its last stomp was in rhythm, but the storm didn't echo back. It answered, and now silence. No more thunder. The rain continues, but gently now, like an apology. The mimic lowers its arms, steps back slowly, one leg after the other, head low. Not in shame, not in defeat, in completion. The performance is over. You exhale and realize you've been holding your breath. The mimic vanishes into the tree line without looking back. And you still crouched under your broken log shelter, soaked in speechless whisper, to no one in particular. You danced with the storm. And the storm listened. Maybe that's all it ever wanted. Not fear, not flight, just someone willing to echo it back. Morning brings a quiet so complete it feels like a mistake. You step outside your shelter expecting more rain, more cracks in the sky, more echoes underfoot, but instead the world is limp. Soaked, yes. Branches draped in wet leaves, mud squishing under every step like a lazy heartbeat. But no thunder, not even birds. You follow the familiar trail toward the mimic's clearing, brushing aside damp fronds and stepping over puddles that reflect trees as if they're lying about being upside down. The clearing looks ruined. The mimic's triangle of thunder spots is scattered. The hollow logs split in two. Pine cones trampled and matted. One of the resonant stumps previously carefully positioned is now half sunk into a puddle like a washed-up drum. You wonder if the mimic came back after the storm. If it saw the damage and grieved it, or if it simply accepted that the performance was a one-time event, the kind that burns its set to the ground on purpose. You sit, wait, listen, and then you hear it, not a stomp this time, but the faint sound of feathers brushing against bark. The mimic arrives slowly today. No fanfare, No stage entrance. It slinks in from the left, wet and quiet, moving more like a shadow than a performer. Its feathers are frizzed from the storm. The tail frill droops. Even the knobbed ends look duller. It walks to the center of the clearing, surveys the debris, and stands still. No booming, no drama. You almost don't recognize it. Then it raises its head and does something completely unexpected. It shakes. Not just water from its feathers, though that happens too, but its whole body, shoulders, tail, even those weird little arms. A shiver that sends a sound like a brush dragged across a drum skin into the damp air. And suddenly it's alive again. Not stomping, not booming, fluttering. Making sound, not with volume, but texture. It walks toward the broken log, taps it lightly with its foot. No echo, just a dull thud. It steps away, flares its neck feathers, and twitches its shoulder blades. The soft rustle is oddly deliberate. It's putting on a show. But this one is quiet. You lean in, confused and impressed. It raises one leg and taps a rock. Clack. Shakes its feathers. Shh, shh. Then whips its tail across a low branch. Thump, crack. You blink. You're improvising. Gone is the thunder. Gone are the big stomps. Now it's crafting a whole new routine, small, sharp sounds, quick movements, little bursts of rhythm like the forest has turned into an instrument, and this soaked dinosaur is playing it on expert mode. It doesn't sound like a storm. It sounds like fear, jittery, unsettled, sudden. You realize what's happening. It's staging a false alarm, not by faking a giant this time, but by simulating panic. The mimic begins to dart between props, tapping, fluttering, rustling, each movement precise, each sound sharp. And sure enough, from the edge of the clearing, a juvenile predator peeks out. It hears the scattered noises and freezes, not because the mimic looks dangerous, but because everything sounds like something else is terrified. Rustle, snap, wing beat, and tap to a forest creature that says one thing, run. And just like that, the predator backs away into the trees. You sit there with your jaw hanging open. You're weaponizing anxiety. One odd fact, meerkats have different alarm calls, not just for different threats, but with different urgencies. Some sound casual, some frantic. The mimic is doing the same thing, creating the illusion of scattered prey, simulating a space that other animals interpret as not safe. It's brilliant and deeply rude. The mimic finally stops, breathing heavily, looking around. And you swear it smirks, not physically, but something in its posture. The way it tilts its head, the slight bounce in its knees. Like it knows exactly what it did and is very pleased with the result. You're watching a new kind of deception unfold. Not just thunder mimicry now, but full sensory theater. A carefully curated blend of fear-inducing behaviors performed in the right order, with the right sound in the right space. Historians still debate whether behavior like this multi-layered mimicry with sound movement and environmental interaction existed among smaller feathered theropods. Some fossils show unusual tail frills, strange foot shapes, or stiffened wing feathers that suggest non-flight-related uses. But behavior like this doesn't fossilize, which is why it's so valuable when you see it. The mimic walks to the puddle in the middle of the clearing and peers at its own reflection. It flares its neck frill slightly, steps to the side, looks again. You half expect it to wink. It doesn't. But it does stomp. Just once. Boom! Not as loud as before, but enough. Enough to let you know it hasn't forgotten who it is. It starts grooming itself, running its beak through its feathers, shaking off the remaining water. You wonder if this whole routine was more than just intimidation, if it was also practice. If the storm broke its old tricks, maybe this is how it builds new ones. From fragments, you stand quietly, not wanting to interrupt, and begin to step away. The mimic watches you go but doesn't stop you. It's busy. It has leaves to arrange, rocks to kick, rhythms to compose. It's reinventing itself. That's the thing about thunder. You think it only comes one way. Loud, skyborne, dangerous. But sometimes, thunder's just performance. Sometimes it's fragments of smaller sounds sewn together with timing and confidence. And sometimes, it's feathers rustling on purpose. There's no performance tonight. No echo, no rhythm, not even a rustle you could misinterpret as drama. You walk to the clearing just after dusk, expecting to find the mimic fine-tuning its new soundscape, but the space is deserted. No feathered shadows, no props arranged just so. The logs remain scattered, the triangle is gone. The silence is sharp. At first you assume the worst, a predator, a rival. Maybe even the storm was too much. Maybe the mimic's confidence had limits. Maybe it got tired of pretending to be thunder. But then you hear it. The absence, not silence, not exactly, the absence of expected noise. You sit down in the clearing, cross-legged, listening, waiting. It's amazing how much sound the jungle makes when it's not being watched. Frogs click, insects buzz, a breeze shifts 100 leaves per second. And yet it all feels distant, muffled, like someone's draped a damp cloth over the entire forest. Then you realize nothing's nearby, no birds on branches, no mammals hopping through the ferns. Even the ants seem less enthusiastic. The clearing isn't just empty, it's avoided. That's when you understand. The mimic is here. It's just doing something new, something crueler. You walk slowly around the clearing's edge. No prints, no feathers, but every time you step closer to the center, something in your body tightens. Not fear, just discomfort, like you're interrupting a conversation you weren't invited to. Then you catch a flicker, a blur of shadow across the underbrush gone in a heartbeat. You freeze, listen, still nothing. You move back, sit near your usual log, and wait. It takes a long time. Long enough that your knees stiffen and the mosquitoes treat you like dinner. But eventually the mimic appears. Not strutting, not stomping, just standing. It steps slowly into the clearing. No props, no echo points, no carefully arranged percussion. Its feathers are slicked down, almost hidden. The frill is flat. The tail hangs low. It makes no sound. You hold your breath, unsure what this version wants. It walks to the middle of the clearing, pauses, then lies down. Not dramatically, not in some symbolic gesture, just rests. And still the jungle avoids it. You realize with a jolt the silence is the performance now. One odd fact. Certain owl species can mute their wing beats so thoroughly that even prey with acute hearing like mice can't detect their approach. They weaponize silence, they make quiet terrifying. That's what the mimic's doing now. Every creature that hears this quiet thinks the same thing, something's watching. But it's not stalking. It's not moving, it just is. A threat-shaped vacuum in the middle of the forest. It's evolved past sound. Now it controls the absence of it. The mimic shifts slightly, not in alarm, but in control. You get the sense that it's counting heartbeats, timing gaps between distant frog calls, adjusting. You squint, trying to find the moment, the cue. Then it clicks, this isn't a new performance, this is a trap. A predator slinks into view, a sleek, dark theropod the size of a golden retriever. Eyes sharp, head low. It scans the clearing from the edge, sees the mimic, frowns, yes, you can see it frown, because the mimic doesn't move. No sound, no posture, no panic, just quiet. The predator steps closer, slowly, unsure. The mimic does nothing. Another step. Still nothing. You can see the predator losing confidence. The quiet's too loud, too controlled. It doesn't make sense. Why isn't it reacting? It hesitates, confused, and then snap. A branch somewhere behind it cracks. Another creature, something else scared off by this bizarre stillness, panics and bolts. Not from the predator, from the atmosphere. The predator whips around in panic, miscalculates its footing, slips. The mimic springs to its feet, not to chase but just to move. And the predator is gone crashing through ferns in pure disoriented retreat. The mimic sits back down, doesn't chase, doesn't even gloat. It wins by doing nothing. You're stunned. Historians still debate whether silence was ever used as a primary defense or hunting tool among non-avian dinosaurs. Vocalizations are well-documented alarm calls, mating cries, even speculative group choruses. But strategic silence, Weaponized absence. You've just witnessed it. The mimic lies there for a long while and eventually so do you. Both of you resting in a clearing no one else wants to enter. There's a strange peace in it. The power of doing less, of meaning more by saying nothing. And then it stands. No fanfare, no sound. It walks into the brush, vanishing with the softest rustle. You wouldn't have noticed it if you weren't staring directly at the spot. You're left alone with the quiet, and yet it doesn't feel like solitude. It feels like presence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself to be real. As you walk home that night, the jungle returns to normal behind you. A frog chirps, a bird calls, the ants get back to work. Life resumes, but only once the mimic's gone. And you wonder, as the stars blink back into the sky, how many creatures rule their worlds not through power or noise, but simply by being noticed, then choosing not to act. Thunder doesn't always boom. Sometimes it waits, and that's worse. Tonight the moon is bright enough to cut through the canopy, not that it helps much. Light bends strangely in a forest like this, filtered, broken, smeared across the bark like it's trying to escape something. You step carefully, holding your breath at every twig crack, because even the small noises feel inappropriate. You're searching for the mimic again, but not to listen, to see. Because someone mentioned a shadow, a long one. Wrong size, wrong shape. Too big for any bird, too thin for a predator. It had passed by a water hole without making a sound, startling every creature into stillness. The story was whispered like gossip around a shared meal, and you'd laughed until you remembered the mimic's new trick. You arrive at the clearing. It's empty. Again? But the air feels strange, not threatening, layered, like something is happening in front of you and behind you at the same time. You step into the clearing slowly, watching your own shadow stretch. The moon is full, low and heavy with that soft yellow that makes everything feel like an old photo. And then you spot it. Not the mimic, its shadow. Cast along the bark of a wide-bellied tree, stretched like a ribbon, tall as a human, with an elongated tail flickering just slightly behind it. The shadow moves, but the creature casting it invisible. You spin, trying to find the source, but there's nothing. Then the shadow steps again. You flinch, because it's not alone. A second shadow joins it slightly behind, slightly to the left, moving in perfect synchronization. Two mimics. You scan the underbrush still. No movement, no feathers, no eyes glinting in the dark. Just shadow play. A moonlit illusion choreographed by the canopy. And then it hits you. They're not two. It's one mimic. And it's using moonlight to cast itself twice. One real, one fabricated. The trees filter the moonlight in just the right way, through a double-branch slit like an ancient puppet theater. The mimic has placed itself exactly between them, so its body casts two distinct shapes on the bark across the clearing. It's invented its own myth, a double-bodied predator. You crouch behind a log, stunned. And now you see it, how it moves to amplify the illusion. Every step is calibrated to make both shadows land together. Every turn is a syncopated loop, choreographed like it knows what its shadows are doing behind its back. You whisper, "Are you serious right now?" The mimic raises one arm slightly. So does its twin. The second shadow looms taller, more intimidating, and then it steps toward its own shadows, positioning them in front of itself like guardians. That's when something stirs in the bushes. A scavenger, lanky, narrow-snouted, covered in patchy proto-feathers, slinks toward the clearing. It freezes the moment the shadows shift. From where it stands, it doesn't see the mimic. Only the twin silhouettes looming like a two-headed god. The scavenger growls, unsure. The mimic, still invisible, slinks slightly right. Its two shadows merge, one moment, two shapes. The next, one giant. The scavenger bolts. Not from sound, not from scent, from geometry. You're so stunned you nearly forget to breathe. One odd fact. On rare occasions, desert lizards will position themselves in moonlight to appear larger to predators, a defensive trick involving nothing but angles. It's rare. Rare because it requires foresight, awareness of light, understanding of how others see you. The mimic understands all of it. It's learned how to cast stories. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had the mental capacity for strategic misdirection through visual projection. Some argue their brains were too primitive. Others point to certain bird species today, like herons and crows, that manipulate light and shadow for hunting or display. But mimicry by shadow, that's a deeper layer. This isn't defense. This is theater in silhouette. The mimic finally reveals itself. It walks slowly into the clearing, head held high, tail arched. No sound, no echo, just a single moonbeam spotlighting it between the branches. Its shadows remain on the tree bark, but now you see them for what they are, tools. Not threats, symbols. It steps into its double shadow, aligns itself so perfectly that it disappears into it, becomes a myth in real time. You exhale and feel your chest shudder. Not from fear, from awe. This creature, once just a noisy bluff, now shapes light, shapes the thoughts of others without touching them. You stand, but the mimic doesn't startle. It glances toward you, not out of alarm but acknowledgement. You've seen it now. You know what it's capable of. And it doesn't care whether you believe in the thunder anymore. Because belief is for the audience, the performer. The performer already knows the ending. It turns and walks away. The shadows break apart. You're alone again, but the twin silhouettes remain just a few moments longer, flickering in place like the last frames of a fading film. You walk home in silence, careful not to cast a shadow of your own, because now even that feels like part of the game. You wake to shouting, not alarmed, shouting, excited. The kind that means someone's found something probably weird, probably dangerous, and definitely worth disturbing your dreams for. You drag yourself upright, still wearing half a dream, and stumble toward the sound. It's a group of foragers gathered at the edge of a ravine. At first, all you see is dust. Then you hear it low, continuous, and growing louder, the thunder of hooves. Not from one animal, but many, dozens, maybe more. And they're running. Down the slope across the valley floor into the trees, a full herd of duck-billed dinosaurs bolting, like they've seen a ghost made of teeth. You squint. What spooked them? Someone mutters, "Didn't see a predator." Another heard a sound. Then they ran. You lean forward, eyes narrowing. Not just a sound, a boom. You're already moving before anyone can stop you. The herd is long gone, trampling everything in their path. Trees cracked, ferns flattened. You count at least 6 juveniles lagging behind, all wide-eyed and panting. They look confused, not injured, just duped. And there at the center of the chaos you find it. The mimic, standing completely still, half-coated in dust kicked up by the stampede. Its feathers are askew, its posture slightly crooked, but its eyes calm, observant. You stare at it. You did this. It says nothing, of course, just blinks. You glance around at the devastation. A whole hillside of plants flattened. Several nests overturned. And in the center, a half-buried log that looks suspiciously recently moved. You walk over, tap it with your foot. Hollow. Of course it is. You piece it together slowly. The mimic set this up. Positioned the log in the narrowest part of the valley floor. Waited for the right moment. And then, boom. That signature stomp, timed precisely, amplified by the hollow log, multiplied by the narrow rock walls. One sound became 10. 10 became panic. And the herd, they ran. Not because of what they saw, because of what they heard. And in their confusion, they left behind a gift. Scattered across the grass, fruit, half-chewed leaves, a few cracked eggs, protein-rich, perfect for scavenging. The mimic picks through the debris casually, like someone shopping for groceries they didn't pay for. You watch in disbelief. No teeth, no chase, and still you feast. It's not even pretending to be a predator anymore. It's pretending to be a disaster. The sound of a collapse. The illusion of danger so believable that entire herds move out of its way. You imagine it now, a small dinosaur roaming the ancient world, not hunting, not fleeing, but startling. Making others panic. Making nature trip over itself. And in the chaos, it eats. One odd fact. Some modern birds, like the fork-tailed drongo, fake alarm calls to scare other animals away from food. The mimic has taken that same idea and scaled it up to an entire ecosystem. You crouch beside a flattened patch of grass and run your hand across the impression. Duckbill footprint. Juvenile. The poor thing probably never saw what scared it. The mimic strolls past you carrying a broken egg in its clawed hand. It pauses as if to say thank you for attending my show, then disappears into the brushtail swinging like a conductor's baton. You sit there for a while dazed. The forest is already beginning to recover. Small birds return to sing. Insects buzz. A distant splash tells you someone's found a puddle worth jumping in. But the memory lingers. Not just of what happened, of how fast it happened. A single sound, a fake one. And nature scattered like marbles across a stone floor. Historians still debate whether early theropods used manipulation as a survival strategy or whether we're projecting intelligence onto instincts. But you've seen this mimic work. There's no instinct here, just intent, and a very dark sense of humor. You rise slowly, brush off your knees, and start the walk back to camp. You're halfway there when you notice something odd, a series of large footprints along the path. Big ones, wider than your forearm, deep. Too deep for the soil to make sense. At first, your stomach lurches. Then you crouch. Smaller prints nearly hidden veer off to the side. Identical shape, same spacing, different weight. You sigh. You again. It staged the footprints. Again. Another lie. As if today's stampede wasn't enough, it left behind a trail of fictional giant feet just to sell the story. To make future trackers believe something huge passed through here. You straighten up and shake your head. You don't even need to exist anymore. You've invented a monster bigger than you'll ever be. The genius of it isn't the performance. It's the footprint of performance. The stories that linger after the noise is gone. And as you reach camp, someone runs up to you breathless. Did you hear a giant came through the valley? You nod. Oh yeah, you say. Big? Terrifying? Thunder in its chest. Then you sit by the fire and smile into your hands. Because you know the truth. There was no predator. Just a tiny dancer with a gift for timing. And tonight, it dined like a king. The air hangs heavy tonight. Not from storms those have passed, but from the kind of waiting that makes even the ferns lean a little farther forward. You know the mimic will perform again. You feel it in your chest, like the rhythm's already started and your heartbeat's trying to catch up. But when you arrive at the clearing, the sound isn't thunder. It's competition. There are two of them now. You freeze at the tree line, half crouched behind a tangle of wet branches. The original mimic, the one you followed for weeks, stands at its usual triangle's edge. Tail feathers raised, shoulders squared, a stance you recognize like an old song. But facing it, mirroring the posture, is a second mimic. Smaller. Not by much, but enough. The feathering is different, thinner, the steps quicker. And then, boom! Not from your mimic, from the other. You flinch. The sound is wrong. Too sharp. No echo. Just noise trying to be thunder and failing. Your mimic answers with a deep, clean stomp that shudders through the clearing like a heartbeat. The trees rustle. Leaves settle. The duel has begun. And it's not pretty. The smaller one stomps again, overcompensating. It throws in a tail flick and even a weird neck flare like it's seen too many bad performances and wants to borrow all of them at once. Your mimic waits, then replies, boom, just one. Perfectly placed. The silence that follows makes the jungle suck in its breath. You sit down slowly, mesmerized. This isn't just a contest of noise. It's a duel of confidence. Rhythm against rhythm. Drama against drama. The smaller mimic circles left. Your mimic circles right. Their footsteps sync for a few beats, then split. The clearing becomes a stage, and the play isn't about dominance. It's about attention. The smaller one moves faster like a drummer on too much caffeine. Each stomp lands just a hair off beat, trying to outpace the echoes. Your mimic doesn't flinch, just listens. Then with maddening calm, it slams the ground again. And again. with perfect pauses in between letting the sound travel, multiply, and return. Boom! Boom! It's not just louder, it's deeper. It feels truer, like it's not mimicking thunder anymore, just reminding it how it used to sound. The challenger falters, stomps again, louder, now desperate. Boom, clack, thwack. A tail lash, a feather flare. Too many ingredients. And then a mistake. The younger mimic thumps too close to the edge of the clearing where the ground is soft. The sound sinks. No echo. Just a pathetic little thud that makes the frogs laugh in chorus. The forest makes its decision right there. Your mimic responds with the cleanest double thump you've ever heard. Perfect symmetry. Perfect pause. The jungle goes silent. Even the wind seems to duck. Historians still debate whether early dinosaur communication evolved into territorial sound battles, similar to how modern birds engage in call-and-response shows of strength. But right now, you don't need theories. You have proof. This is a sound war, and your mimic just won. The younger one puffs its feathers one last time, then deflates like a broken bellows. It turns, steps back, then disappears into the tree line with the unmistakable gait of someone who just lost an argument with the concept of thunder. You exhale for the first time in minutes. Your mimic doesn't celebrate, doesn't gloat. Just steps back to the center of the clearing, pauses, and flicks its tail in a slow, lazy arc. You whisper, you didn't just perform, you taught. Because every step, every perfectly timed pause wasn't just about outdoing the rival, it was demonstration. A lesson. Here's how you build the illusion. Here's how you hold an audience. Here's how you don't mess it up. You wonder if the mimic hoped the other would learn, or if it was just setting boundaries. One odd fact, some animals like dolphins use signature calls that act like names. Others mimic the calls of peers to mock or challenge them. The idea of vocal identity exists across species, but this is something rarer: rhythmic identity. You are what you sound like. Your mimic gives one final stomp, not for dominance, for punctuation, then turns and vanishes into the trees. You sit there, long after it's gone, watching the clearing recover. A few birds return. A cluster of beetles hums. The log still vibrates faintly from the last stomp, as if trying to remember the shape of the echo. You stand. Walk the circle. Feel the subtle differences in ground texture, the places where sound holds and where it disappears. It's like reading a map written in pressure and rhythm. And then you smile, because even though the challenger lost, you think it'll be back, not for revenge, for rematch. The mimic has created something bigger than itself now. A tradition, a format, a ritual of sound and illusion passed from one creature to another. And soon, others will try. Maybe one day, whole forests will thump in rhythm, herds and loners, feathered show-offs and quiet understudies. All of them learning to walk like thunder. And you'll be in the front row. You don't go looking for the mimic today. You're not sure why. Maybe it's because you've seen enough for now. Maybe it's because the echoes are still bouncing around your head like loose marbles. Or maybe it's because you're afraid of what you might find. Instead, you walk the ridge trail behind the stream, the one with the sandstone overlook. The air's dry, breezy, the kind of afternoon that feels like it's holding a breath too long. You sit on the edge, legs dangling, watching the ferns below ripple like waves, and you wonder if the mimic is down there watching too. Eventually, your wandering leads you to the old tree, the one with roots like gnarled fingers and a trunk so wide it could swallow your shelter twice. And beneath it, the mimic. You stop. It doesn't notice you right away. Or maybe it does and just doesn't care. It's lying down, not in its usual coiled way, but sprawled. Feathers draped like tired clothes, tail limp, frill sagging. Something's changed. You step closer, slow and careful, and now you see it more clearly. The stiffness, the shallow breathing, the slight tremble in its chest with every exhale. You whisper, "Hey!" No response. You sit beside the tree, leaving enough space not to be a threat, but close enough that if it did choose to move, you'd feel it. For a long while, neither of you does anything. The forest moves on. Birds flit, Leaves shift. The occasional breeze stirs a branch overhead, dropping dust and fragments of bark into the sunlight. But the mimic doesn't stir. You glance at its feet, those clever, thunder-making feet, and they're still. One claw twitches now and then like it's remembering a performance. But the movement isn't intentional. You feel it in your chest like a slow ache. It's old. Maybe not ancient, but old enough for the rhythm to wear thin. Feathers have dulled. Knobs on its tail are chipped. The frill is frayed. Even its colors, those brilliant storm-colored patterns, have faded to a dusty brown-gray. It used to mimic thunder. Now it mimics stillness. You reach down, pick up a small stick, and gently draw a circle in the dirt. Not big, just wide enough for a pretend stage. 3 points. The mimic's triangle. You tap the ground softly. Thud. Barely a sound. But the mimic stirs. Not much. Just one eye opening slightly. Looking not at you, but at the circle. It blinks. Twice. Then lowers its head again. You try another rhythm. A tap, pause, tap-a-tap. The mimic exhales slowly. And for a second, just one, its tail twitches in sync. A faint flicker. A ghost of performance. You smile. It's not dead, just finished. Historians still debate how long small feathered dinosaurs lived. Some estimates say 10 years, maybe 15. But lifespans are only part of the story. What matters more is what they carry. This mimic carried sound. It carried thunder, not just in feet, but in memory. It made animals run, made birds hush, made even you, the big, self-aware, tool-wielding human, freeze in awe. And now, lying here beneath a tree older than most bones, it's letting that rhythm go. One odd fact in modern songbirds: some individuals forget their songs in old age. They lose the rhythm that once shaped their place in the flock. The tune becomes broken. The echo doesn't come back. Maybe that's happening here too. You lean back against the tree. The mimic shifts slightly, adjusting its weight. You notice something then. A faint, uneven set of footprints near the base of the trunk. Not yours, smaller. Closer together. A visitor. Maybe the younger mimic from the sound duel. Maybe one of a new wave of imitators. Whoever it was, they stood here, watched this moment, walked around the tree, and left. You look at the mimic again. Its eyes are closed now. Not in pain, just peace. It's not trying anymore, not performing, not proving, just being. You don't need a stomp to understand what that means. The forest is quiet, but not empty. Somewhere far off, a branch cracks in rhythm. A bird call repeats itself oddly 3 times in a row. A small rustle echoes louder than it should. The echoes continue even if their source has gone quiet. And you realize this isn't the end of a performer. It's the end of a format. The original Thunder Child lies beneath a tree, wrapped in its own story, while the world it shaped begins to mimic it. You stay there until the stars rise. The mimic breathes softer now, slower. Eventually, it doesn't move again. You don't cry, that's not what it would want. You just tap the ground once more. Boom. For memory. Time passes strangely after that. Not fast, not slow, just unmeasured. The mimic's final echo never really leaves the clearing. It just fades into the rhythm of other things. The rustling ferns, the dripping trees. Your own careful footsteps retracing the same path you've walked 100 times, now quieter for knowing where it led. You come back to the clearing one morning months later, not expecting anything, just drawn. A habit you haven't quite broken. There's no trace of the mimic now. No bones. No feathers. Nature reclaims its props quickly. The hollow log is gone, rotted to mulch. The triangle of echo points has grown moss. A small tree now leans at the clearing's center like it was planted deliberately. You smile. But today you're not the only one visiting. A group of traveling scholars, paleontologists, sort of has arrived at the nearby cliffs. They dig, they sketch, they measure. You listen to their chatter from a distance, hiding behind a fallen trunk with ears wide open. They've found tracks, big ones, deep impressions in the soft clay at the base of the hill. 3 toes splayed wide, 4 inches deep. A trail stretching maybe 20 meters across the flatland, each print heavy, deliberate. They're excited. The stride is enormous, one says. It must have been 6 meters long. No bones nearby, though, says another. They huddle over their notebooks, tossing out theories. A massive predator. A thunder-footed herbivore. Maybe something never seen before. You know better. You walk down later when they're gone for the day and crouch beside one of the prints. You run your fingers through it. There, just faintly, you can still see the drag line from a stick or claw that once smoothed the edges to make the print look bigger than it really was. And near it, almost invisible, a set of smaller, shallower footprints veers away into the brush. Your heart thumps, not with sadness, with pride. Because the mimic's final story wasn't just a silence. It was a footprint, a lie, left like a signature. You sit there for a while tracing the patterns in the clay. You wonder how many years these prints will last. How long it will take before someone chisels around them, wraps them in plaster, mounts them in a museum and says, "We think this was a giant," and they'll be wrong, but also strangely right, because the story isn't in the size of the foot. It's in the echo it leaves behind. Historians still debate whether false traces, exaggerated footprints, misleading trackways exist in the fossil record. There are scattered anomalies. Deep impressions with no bones to match. Oversized prints leading nowhere. Most dismiss them as flukes. Erosion. Misidentified species. But what if they're not? What if hidden among the fossilized footsteps of ancient beasts are the lies of smaller creatures that simply knew how to tell a story? You wander the ridge above the valley and find more prints. Faint, shallow, spiraling, crossing paths. They're old, almost gone. But here and there you see the rhythm. Step, pause, step, step, drag. A dance you recognize. You sit down in the tall grass, stare at the sky, and imagine the mimic walking there. Alone, feathered, stomping softly into the dust, not to survive, not to threaten, just to be remembered. One odd fact: the oldest recorded musical instrument ever discovered was a bone flute around 40,000 years old. But what came before that? Before tools. Before humans. Maybe thunder. Maybe rhythm. Maybe a little dinosaur in a forgotten jungle, sculpting fear out of echoes and casting myths with nothing but feet and instinct. You lie back, eyes closed, feeling the wind cross the clearing like a fading drumbeat. You'll tell no one the truth. Let them believe in the giant. Let them chase a shadow that never lived. Because sometimes the best stories are the ones that outlive their authors, even if those authors had feathers, even if they never meant to be remembered. You return one final time, not to search, not to watch, but just to walk. The forest has changed in your absence. Not drastically, just enough to feel unfamiliar in the most familiar ways. A fallen tree where there once was shade. New growth curling from blackened bark. The log you used to sit on now hollowed and soft, its edges feathered with moss. But you recognize the path. Your feet follow it on their own, each step placed as if guided by memory. Not just yours, the forest's too. You reach the clearing as twilight lowers itself like a curtain. The edges are overgrown now, wildflowers curling through old props, pine cones, broken sticks, even a few feather shafts that somehow escape time's hunger. You step into the center. The ground is uneven, soft, and yet you feel it. That old shape? The triangle, not in lines, not in markings, in space. You walk its corners gently, tracing the pattern you watch the mimic perform again and again. A beat without sound, a show without audience. And yet, the forest is listening. Somewhere above, a small bird lets out 3 chirps in rhythm. A breeze knocks a branch. Once, then twice, then silence. Even the crickets pause just long enough for you to notice. You kneel and press your hand to the earth. The soil is damp and warm, like it remembers being stomped. You wait for something to answer back. It doesn't. But the quiet doesn't sting this time, because something has answered. You rise, brush the dirt from your hands, and walk to the edge of the clearing. You glance back once. Just once. And you see them. Not clearly, just hints, flickers. A pair of small dinosaurs' juveniles, maybe, dart through the ferns across the way. One stomps the ground with clumsy flair, the other mimics, unsure but eager. They play for no one. Practice in private, but the rhythm is there. Boom, boom, boom. You smile. It's not gone. It's growing. The mimic may have vanished, but the beat it wrote has been passed down like a secret melody. Not through bloodlines or fossils, but through performance. And someday, years from now, centuries even, someone else will hear thunder where there are no clouds, will feel tremors without earthquakes, will turn their head at a rhythm they don't quite understand, and somewhere some descendant of that little feathered lyre will be behind it all, thumping, rattling, dancing in perfect sync with nothing but instinct and memory. One odd fact: in some oral cultures, music and stories are never written down, only passed through ritual and repetition. If the rhythm breaks, the history dies. But if someone remembers, if someone repeats, then even the dead still echo. You take one last breath of the clearing. The air smells like damp bark, crushed grass, and a whisper of static like a storm hasn't started yet but might. Then you leave, slowly, without fanfare, because some endings don't need punctuation, just silence, and then a footstep, and then another. This was the story of a small, feathered dinosaur that never needed teeth or strength to survive, just rhythm. From the moment you heard its false thunder echo through the trees, you were caught in its spell. You watched it stage elaborate performances, stomp with strategic flair, and even weaponize silence. You saw it mimic storms, cast double shadows in moonlight, fake its own size, and scare entire herds into stampeding with nothing but sound. It lied beautifully, and the forest believed it. And you did too. Over time, you followed the mimic's evolution from performer to legend. You witnessed its quiet rivalry with younger imitators, its masterful control of space and echo, and finally its gentle retreat beneath an ancient tree. Even as its voice faded, its influence remained etched into footprints, staged into fossil record, whispered between birds and bugs as rhythm turned to memory. In its final act, the mimic didn't stomp, it waited. And the world kept listening. Now you carry its rhythm forward, footstep after footstep, quiet thunder in your chest. And somewhere out there, a new mimic performs not because it has to, but because someone once did. That's how myths begin. Not with gods or giants, but with small creatures that dared to sound bigger. So if you ever hear a boom in the woods on a clear day, don't run. Pause. Listen. You just might be hearing a ghost with feathers